What pushes an adult child to make the devastating decision to cut off their own parent, to completely erase them from their life? It's a choice that most people don't understand, and it's surrounded by judgment. But it's far more common than you might think. Research from Cornell University found that over a quarter of American adults are estranged from a family member, and a significant number of those are parents cut off by their children. This isn't about one big fight over politics. It's almost never about a kid being ungrateful or suddenly brainwashed by therapy. The choice to go no contact is usually the last desperate act in a long, quiet story of survival. It is the absolute last resort. So in this video, we're not going to focus on the surface-level arguments. We're going to get to the heart of it, the most common and devastating psychological reason an adult child is forced to choose their own survival over their own family. To the parent and to everyone on the outside, the silence that follows estrangement feels like it came out of nowhere. A shocking, sudden rejection. They'll say things like, "I don't get it. I gave them everything." Or, "One day they just stopped calling." But for the adult child, it wasn't sudden at all. It was a slow, painful erosion that took place over years, sometimes decades. Think about a shoreline. For years, waves crash against it. At first, it just looks like water, but with every single wave, a few tiny grains of sand are carried away. Day to day, you'd never notice the change. But after 20 years, the coastline looks completely different. That's what the child experiences. It's the emotional equivalent of 1,000 tiny cuts. 1,000 moments where they felt dismissed, ignored, or misunderstood. When researchers interview adult children who have cut contact, the story is almost always the same. They describe a long history of emotional harm that the parent repeatedly denied or ignored. They talk about trying over and over again to be heard. They'd set a boundary, and it would be trampled. They'd try to explain their feelings calmly, and they'd be dismissed. They'd lower their expectations, just hoping for a tiny bit of change, only to be let down again. That cycle of hope and disappointment is soul-crushing. Eventually, the child learns a brutal lesson. Nothing is ever going to change. The silence isn't sudden. It's the final, quiet collapse after the foundation has been wearing away for a lifetime. So, what are these waves made of? What's the force that can wear away a child's love? In the vast majority of cases, the core psychological reason is something quiet, invisible, and incredibly damaging. Childhood emotional neglect. Emotional neglect isn't about what a parent did. It's about what they didn't do. It's not about the presence of obvious abuse, which is, of course, a valid reason for estrangement, but the absence of emotional support, validation, and connection. It's so damaging because it leaves no visible bruises, which is why it's confusing for outsiders, and a lot of the time, for the parent themselves. Think of a child's emotional needs like a well. A healthy parent fills that well with empathy, interest, comfort, and the clear message, "You matter. Your feelings matter to me." But for a child in a state of emotional neglect, that well is always empty. When they're sad, instead of getting a hug, they're told, "Stop crying, you're too sensitive." When they're excited about something they achieved, instead of celebration, they get a flat, "That's nice." When they're scared or anxious, they aren't comforted. They're told to toughen up. The parent is physically there, but emotionally gone. Any love they show feels conditional. It's given when the child is performing well, being quiet, or not causing any trouble. But it vanishes the second they're messy, emotional, or inconvenient. The child learns a devastating lesson. My true self is a burden. Who I really am is not enough. This has huge long-term consequences. Adults who grew up with emotional neglect often feel a deep sense of emptiness, have low self-esteem, and carry a feeling that something is fundamentally broken inside them. They might become intense people-pleasers, desperate to finally earn the love they never got freely. Or they might just go numb, finding it impossible to even know what they're feeling, let alone trust anyone else with those feelings. They live with a constant, gnawing loneliness, the feeling that even with the one person they were supposed to be closest to, they were completely alone. Trying to sort through these feelings can be incredibly isolating. If any of this is resonating with you, or you're trying to understand someone in your life, consider subscribing. We break down the psychology of relationships to help build understanding and healing. And if you feel comfortable, share a piece of your own experience in the comments. Just reading that you're not alone can be a powerful first step. For years, the adult child often hangs on to a tiny sliver of hope. They think, maybe this time will be different. Maybe if I just explain it better, they'll finally get it. They keep going back to that empty well, praying they'll finally find water. So, what's the breaking point? What finally makes them stop trying? It's almost never one huge, dramatic fight. It's usually a last straw moment, a seemingly small thing that proves with painful clarity that the parent is just not capable of changing. It's the moment that the cycle of hope finally dies for good. One powerful example from research involved a woman who had spent years trying to get her mother to see her pain. Her own daughter was battling a life-threatening eating disorder. In a moment of total desperation, she called her mother, begging for support. Her mother's response was an email that completely dismissed her granddaughter's illness and her daughter's pain. For that woman, the email was the final piece of evidence. The hope that her mother could ever be the source of comfort she needed was just gone. She cut ties almost immediately, and with that decision came a profound sense of relief. This leads to the final driving force, self-preservation. The adult child realizes the relationship isn't just disappointing. It's actively harming them. The constant anxiety before a phone call, the feeling of walking on eggshells during every conversation, the emotional hangover that lasts for days, it just becomes too much. It costs them too much of their mental health and their peace. The choice to go no contact isn't an act of revenge. It is an act of survival. It's a boundary drawn not out of hate, but out of the desperate need to finally stop the emotional bleeding. It's the adult finally choosing to parent themselves, to give themselves the safety and validation they never got. A lot of people wonder if this is a new thing. Is family estrangement on the rise? While it's definitely more talked about now, the reasons are ancient. What's really changed is our culture's idea of what a family is for. For generations, family was seen through a lens sociologists call compulsory kinship. This is the idea that family ties are permanent and you don't get a choice, no matter how bad the relationship is. The rule was, blood is thicker than water, and you were expected to put up with disrespect, conflict, or even abuse out of a sense of duty. But we are in the middle of a huge cultural shift toward what's now being called democratized kinship. This new ideal says that relationships, including family, should be built on mutual respect, accountability, and emotional safety. The modern expectation is that a relationship should add to your well-being, not constantly drain it. Thanks to therapy, social media, and a much greater public awareness of mental health, people now have the words to identify unhealthy dynamics. Concepts like gaslighting, toxic relationships, and setting boundaries are part of our everyday language. People are realizing they have a right to feel safe emotionally, and that this right applies to their family, too. This isn't about a generation being snowflakes. It's about a generational awakening that emotional abuse is real abuse, and that parenting once brushed off as just strict might actually have been deeply harmful. Choosing to erase a parent is one of the most painful decisions a person can ever make. It goes against our social and biological programming. It is an admission that the very person who was supposed to be your safe harbor is actually the storm. We've seen that this choice is almost never an impulse. It's the result of a slow erosion caused by years of emotional neglect, of going to an empty well for water, time and time again. It's triggered by the death of hope that the parent will ever change, and it's ultimately an act of profound self-preservation. If you're an adult child who has made this choice, please know that your decision is valid. The grief you feel doesn't mean you made the wrong choice. It's a sign of your own health and your ability to love. And if you're on the outside looking in, trying to understand how this could happen, remember the long, invisible story that came before the silence. Remember the thousands of times the child reached out for connection, only to find no one there. Healing from a toxic family isn't about pretending the past didn't happen. It's about refusing to let your past write your future. It's about building a life where you feel safe, seen, and valued. It's about choosing your own peace over your history. And that is a choice that takes an unimaginable amount of courage.